Hi, my name is Deon Rebello, and I'm the CEO of D6 Bullion. And this is episode 6 of the D6 Bullion Vault. Hi, Willem, how you doing?
Good news, Deon.
Very good, thanks. So today we've also decided, we discussed it in the last episode that we are going to be discussing platinum. It was the top performer in 2023, and subsequently has been on the bottom side of two stars, being both gold and platinum and silver. That said, we want to unpack it. And the main drive of this channel is to create awareness and give the investor or the potential person that's wanting to look in alternative uh, avenues for investing into that are linked to the dollar, that's not linked to, say, the Rand in South Africa, but that also becomes a safe haven asset. Now, platinum, like silver, is a little bit different. But we're going to go into that. But I was just wanting to just do a quick run through of the current state of affairs. Yesterday we had an all-time high again with gold.
Yeah, we were talking about the $2,800 barrier a few episodes ago, and how it's struggling to breach that, and it has not only breached it, it's absolutely obliterated it. In fact, we went to over $2,900, and now we are looking all that much closer to $3,000.
Again, it goes back to our predictions, which we kind of were very conservative on. And again, I still stand by those. I see these all as opportunities, but yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, we were talking about 3,000, and as I said, I think I mentioned that the sooner it can break through that 2,800 is going to dictate how far it goes over 300. And well, February, there we go, done.
Yeah, and in fact, that's an 11% to date growth for the year of 2025 for gold. Considering last year, I think it was about 27% in all, or
Yeah, it was I think 24 to 27% or something. I can't remember the exact
yeah.
percentage right now. And yes, there is a bit of a scramble for gold at the moment. People are worried about the tariffs that Trump might place on imported gold, and yeah, people are absolutely scrambling to get their hands on it before that happens.
Well, that's quite interesting that you raise that. With the CPM, which is the company that owns the COMEX in the US, they've had phenomenal gold deliveries, which reached about $5.2 billion for January. So the demand on the physical is definitely there. And even now, I was reading an article in China where they were talking about that they are pushing a lot of the investment houses and companies to start allocating a minimum of 1% to the physical commodity.
Yeah, it's as we always say, it's a safe haven, and just look at everything that's happening at the moment. It's enough to make your head spin, you know. And it's globally, it's across the world, it's literally everywhere. There's something going on, and as we said, people tend to flock to gold in times of turmoil, geopolitical, financial. Gold is the safe haven, and that's exactly what's happening. And now with the threat that there might be an added premium added to that safe haven, people are trying to scoop it up as fast as they possibly can. And well, there we go, $2,900 an ounce.
A modern day gold rush.
Very much so. Very much so.
So, we're going to go straight into it, and again, we're going to dedicate this first part of the podcast to current affairs. We just want to touch on to it, but we want to really go into the main feature today, and that is platinum, and why platinum. If we go back and Willem, we're going to just chat about the pricing of platinum over the last couple of years, just to give the listener an idea of why platinum.
So let's start off with what is platinum. Now, firstly, it's a precious metal. I
Yes.
think we all know that. But unlike gold, it's more like silver in the sense that it is an industrial metal. It's got thousands of uses outside of jewelry and investment. I mean, if we look at it, one of the biggest uses for it is in the autocatalytic converters on cars, which is used for pollution control, and we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah.
But it's got uses in medical in medical applications, it's got uses in chemical applications, and then one of the biggest things, one of the things that we're excited about is it is absolutely crucial to hydrogen fuel cells.
I know, and for me, this is actually quite exciting, and we're going to unpack that whole thing. That considering where platinum is, and we'll talk about the pricing of where it was. It, as I mentioned in our introduction, in 2023, it was the top performer in the three of the precious metals. Again, you highlight the fundamental importance between, say, gold, which does have small industrial applications. Silver has a bigger industrial application other than just being investment grade. But platinum, yes, predominantly is very much investment grade. But come around to 2008, the price of platinum actually shot up.
Yeah, it was, South Africa was having a little bit of turmoil at that stage. And well, South Africa is the biggest producer of platinum in the world
Yeah.
by a large margin. It produces, I think, around about 37% of all the platinum in the world is produced in South Africa. And because of that, as soon as we start having trouble, platinum is in trouble and the price will shoot up. So 2008, it was kind of a perfect storm for platinum. There was turmoil in South Africa. The autocatalytic converter sector had absolute maximum demand, and everything just came together and we saw it rise to almost $2,300 an ounce. Now, back then, that was absolutely ludicrously expensive. And I think it was worth about twice the price of gold back then.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at where gold was, if I remember correctly, it was probably just under $1,000 an ounce at the time. But again, I'll go back to that. But what is interesting, as you mentioned, platinum had hit an all-time high of over $2,000 an ounce. It was absolutely flying. There was some, as you talk about, the perfect storm. The big thing is, yes, predominantly out of all the PGMs, which is a platinum group of metals, platinum, palladium, iridium, radium, osmium, and there's a whole number of other of the platinum metals. Now, they all have very different characteristics and some similar, but also very different. And at that stage in AutoCAD, platinum was the dominant metal used. And as you say, simply it is used in catalytic converters within cars to minimize the exhaust emissions and to make sure that what is pumped out of your car is more friendly than dangerous. And that's a very simplified way of putting it. But come 2008, there was a massive shift away from platinum to palladium in that sector.
Definitely. I mean, as I said, platinum was $2,300 an ounce, and it was absolutely outrageous at the time. Um, and because of that, they started switching over from platinum to palladium, because back then palladium was a lot cheaper than platinum, and it was easy to just swap between the two. Well, I won't say easy, but it was possible for them to swap between the two. Now, another metal in the PGM group that you just mentioned that I think you omitted is rhodium.
Yes.
And rhodium is also critical in the AutoCAD sector. In fact, rhodium is the one metal that cannot be replaced. That you need the rhodium. So rhodium is sitting there. It's being left alone. It's merrily going absolutely bonkers on price. But then you've got palladium and you've got platinum. Now, because platinum was so expensive, they started switching to palladium. And that has been the major element in these catalytic converters ever since. I mean, if we look at it at the moment, the three dominant metals is platinum, palladium, and rhodium. And out of that, 35% of platinum is used for auto catalytic converters. 85% of that of palladium is being used for AutoCAD converters.
Okay, so we painted the picture. There's a massive fall. So around I think it was mid 2008, the price absolutely collapsed to under $800 an ounce.
Yeah.
And suddenly, platinum was no longer the hot commodity. I mean, that was a fashion from a jewelry perspective. Everyone wanted platinum. They didn't want gold.
Yep.
It's silver in color. It looks good. It's very high in density. So as far as a ring, it would give a good feel and feel
Yeah,
luxurious.
it's extremely durable. That's the other thing. It is very hard. It's extremely durable. It's got a high melting point, and so yeah, it's a very durable metal, and that was also one of the attractive features about it. You know, you make a ring out of it. If you make a ring out of silver or gold, it's going to scratch easy. It's going to pick up marks. If you make it out of platinum, it's going to take a lot more to scratch that platinum than it does to scratch, let's say, 18 karat gold.
So yeah, and 100%. So if we look at then from that period, and since 2008 and all the way through, I mean, it did go through a period of about probably 3 4 years from 2010 to around 2016, where it went back to around just under about $1,900 again, peaking in January of 2011. And then it pulled down and it's constantly been pulling down. But since 2016 until now, it's been very lateral in its movement. It's been keeping around $1,000, dipping under for a bit of time, going over for a bit of time, and subsequently been hovering there. Now, as an investor, as someone listening to this, what's the relevance of platinum?
So the relevance of platinum isn't the now, it's the future.
Okay.
Um, if we're looking at what's happening right now, there's a shift towards electronic cars, and you know all over the world. You look at the European Union, who signed an agreement that by 2030, I think, no more new gas-powered cars or petrol-powered cars, no more new diesel vehicles, no more new petrol vehicles. It has to be electric or it has to be hydrogen, and hydrogen is the future of platinum.
And again, to understand where platinum fits into the hydrogen story. So you talk about also, and this is very important, and we're definitely going to do that in another episode where we talk about the green economy, because both silver and platinum will benefit from that growth in the silver in the green economy. And where we're talking then, you've just touched on it in Europe, but globally, there's been agreements that of course, going into the future, they want to make sure that they minimize the burning of fossil fuels and look at alternative energy sources. Platinum falls into the hydrogen story, and silver, of course, falls into the EV and electrical vehicle and solar panel story.
Yes, so we'll save silver for another day because there's a lot to do there. And
Absolutely.
but yes, as I said, firstly, the thing is, you know, there's new regulations coming into effect on vehicle emissions. So a lot of trucks and vehicles, or mostly fleets of trucks, will have to have their emission control re- retooled, if I can put it that way. It would need to be updated to meet the new emissions regulations, because you can't just scrap an entire fleet of trucks. Right now, there's nothing really to replace it. I mean, electric trucks aren't quite there yet. Um, so, firstly, it's gonna. There's a lot of platinum going to be needed to retool those catalytic converters on all of those trucks. So there's a lot of demand growing for platinum in that sense. Secondly, we're looking at how are we going to replace those petrol and diesel powered cars and vehicles, because right now we've got battery powered vehicles, we've got all of the EVs on the road, and they work great as a passenger vehicle, but that's not going to work for a truck.
And just to unpack that is with the current technology of EVs or battery powered vehicles. So the engine is an electric engine and the fuel source is a battery. Now, the biggest problem with the current technology is your power to weight ratio. In other words, the amount of batteries you need in order to power a vehicle and then a truck, which is a far bigger vehicle, would require a certain amount of batteries. Now, what they've actually looked at is an EV truck, literally a third of its actual weight would be batteries. Now, how does that translate? Is it's very simple. A truck, especially a truck that's carrying load, The more load it can carry based on its weight, the more economical it is and the more profitable it becomes. Now, if you already hindered by the weight of the truck being a third that's just covered in batteries, you're going to lose that profitability on the long run and also on the range. And this is where platinum then comes into it. Platinum has a far greater range than any battery power right now. Its recharge times is literally what you would do if you had to go to a garage to fill up with, be it silver, be it diesel or petrol. But again, that is the difference. Is there is a lot of exciting things to come with platinum as hydrogen.
Yeah, and I mean the two biggest things there is weight and recharge time. Yes, platinum or hydrogen is literally you go to the pump, you connect your connector, and you put in your hydrogen like you would your diesel. If you were to charge up a truck, you might be stuck there for, I don't know, a good few hours to get the battery charge back up. And secondly, yes, the weight. You'd rather be hauling goods than hauling batteries. So that's where hydrogen comes in. And the reason why we keep talking about hydrogen when we say we're talking about platinum is because platinum is the catalyst for a hydrogen fuel cell.
And very simply put, like I'd mentioned, the battery is the fuel to an electric engine. Now, essentially, what you would do is you would have a hydrogen fuel cell in your vehicle, and the platinum basically takes the gas of hydrogen and converts it into electricity. Very simplified. I know there's a lot of
Yeah,
technology
yeah.
there.
I'm not a scientist, but yes, essentially what it does is the platinum is the catalyst they use. Now I know they've tried looking at other catalysts, they've experimented with other catalysts, but so far they found nothing that is as effective or as durable as platinum. So we're still stuck on the platinum. They're going to need platinum for those hydrogen fuel cells, and if you need perhaps, I don't know, two per truck or one per vehicle, that's a lot of platinum that's going to be in demand in the just the automotive sector.
And again, when we look at this whole story on hydrogen and platinum's very much linked to it, Japan came out and declared themselves to become the first hydrogen economy. Just unpack what that actually really means.
So if you look across the world, basically the entire world is reliant on fossil fuels. So we're using coal, we're using oil, and we're using it in vast quantities, and that basically means the producers can name their price just about. Without it, the world would collapse. Now, Japan has said, hang on, we're not going to do that anymore. We, instead of relying on fossil fuels for that, we're going to produce, or we're going to switch over to hydrogen. That means our electricity is going to be generated by hydrogen. Our ships, massive cargo ships that are being powered by hydrogen, cars, houses, everything that uses electricity is going to be powered by hydrogen instead of fossil fuels.
And again, it's also the harvesting or the creation of the hydrogen where platinum will again play a very crucial role in actually harvesting or creating the hydrogen.
Yes, and that's the other thing is hydrogen is unique in that once it is used, once it is converted into electricity, it basically turns into water. And from that water, you can once again harvest the hydrogen. So it's renewable. There are green ways of extracting it if there are deposits of it. It's not like fossil fuels where you set it on fire and it produces pollution and it's gone.
Yeah. And again, this is quite a broad topic, but even in the harvesting of hydrogen, yes, there are ways of harvesting it from oil, which they now have different colors to determine the quality or the cleanness of the hydrogen. For instance, brown graded hydrogen is from oil, so it's not a good source. If they have to produce it, it's going to come from a source that's already a very pollutant heavy thing versus your lighter colors. And then I think the highest grade is a pink, or is it
I
green?
think it's the green
Yeah,
hydrogen is, yeah, it's not only the grade, it's also the methods of
correct.
extracting it, of refining it. And yeah, green is pretty much what the ideal. way of extracting. It's the least pollution, and it produces the cleanest hydrogen, if we can call it that, in terms of how much pollution is expended to produce that hydrogen.
Okay, so if we look at the story of platinum and we go back to where it had that massive drop, palladium was then the alternative source for autocatalytic converters. And then platinum kind of went into the distance and was just tinkering on. As I said, there were a few peaks and few dips, but literally from 2015 until now, which is a good 10 years, it's remained very lateral. Now, what was interesting is just after COVID, after 2020, there's a definite shift away from palladium in certain things, and we're going to explain and unpack that why. But there was a definite move from an investment perspective back to in platinum. In the sector, in the automotive sector, there was a definite move back to platinum. Just unpack why.
So I think the reason is quite obvious once you understand where it comes from. Firstly, as I mentioned, platinum biggest producer is South Africa. The second biggest producer is Russia. Now, South Africa produces around 37% of all the platinum in the world, and then Russia produces around 24%, if I'm correct. However, palladium, the biggest producer by an absolute country mile, with something like 90% of all the palladium being produced there, is Russia. So there's two reasons why palladium has fallen out of favor. Firstly, Russia invading Ukraine. The entire world was upset about it. It's still ongoing. There's sanctions against Russia. And if you can replace it with something that is similar without having to go and buy the Russian palladium, they're going to do that. Hence, we've seen the price of palladium go from, what was it, 3,000? No, I think it was even higher than that, but it was really, really expensive. And it is now dropped to, I think it's around about $960 an ounce, while platinum is sitting at roughly 990, if I'm correct right now. So you can see platinum is already more valuable than palladium. They're closer now. There's no longer that massive disparity that was in platinum's favor and then swung around in palladium's favor. They're sort of sitting on equal footing now. So that's the first reason is, yes, people have a distaste for it, if I can put it that way, because it comes from Russia. The second reason is global warming, believe it or not. We've got a problem. The permafrost is melting. Now, permafrost is when the ground in Russia is actually frozen, rock hard, solid frozen, and they mine in that permafrost to extract the palladium. Problem is, it's melting. So now instead of having rock hard, frozen ground to mine, they're sitting with water. All of those mines are filling up with water, they're collapsing, it's dangerous to mine, and there's a shortage. So once again, we can just swap that out for platinum. Let's rather do that.
And you say that, and I always remember when we did the original research in this, and it's clearly my ignorance, so forgive me for that. But we speak of permafrost, I thought, yeah, it's a couple of meters deep, but it turns out we're talking a couple of 100 meters deep.
Yeah.
And of course, with all those mines being in that region, in a mine, you are only profitable when you're blasting and you're removing ore from that bed, that ore body. And the problem there with the permafrost is if it's melting, they would be flooding a lot of those mines, which therefore they would be unable to do their basic function, which is blasting and removing the ore and then refining it and so on. So that was also part of the story, which I always found quite interesting, was there was a shift. Be it as you mentioned, Russia and war, and then also the permafrost. It went back into platinum's favor, and hence, as I mentioned to you, in 2023, platinum was the top performer.
Yeah, sorry, I just want to correct myself. It's 29% of the platinum palladium comes from Russia, not 92. I had a bit of a mind swap there, but yeah, I just did want to correct that quickly.
Not a problem.
But yeah, it's as you said, the mine is only profitable as long as you're extracting ore. And basically all they're doing now is pumping water. And yeah, it is a problem. And that's why we're seeing the swing back to platinum. That's why we're seeing the dip in the palladium price. And why platinum is, it's not surging or anything. Last year, or 2023, it had a good year. It's not surging, but it is holding steady. And I think as soon as, we're looking to the future, as I said, the most important thing isn't what we can get out of it now. The most important thing is what it's going to be. And that's always what we urge people to look at when we're talking about alternative investments like bullion, is don't think, what can I get out of it now in the short term? Look and think, what can I get out of it over the next 20 years? And that's where I think platinum is going to come into its own, is once economy starts shifting over to hydrogen power, to electric vehicles, because an increase in electric vehicles also cause an increase in demand from the automotive sector for platinum. Electric vehicles do use more platinum than the petrol powered vehicles. So all of it is playing towards the future, and I think once that ban kicks in, we're going to see a definite shift back to platinum, and we're going to see a rise in the demand of platinum.
And for me, I've always said this, is I find platinum is the dark horse. It had like we've now mentioned a number of times, it had a very good 2023. It was the best performer and so on. But for me, what is exciting, and you just got to start paying attention to the basics, what's happening, is I do believe where battery powered vehicles on EVs, the downfall, like I said, is the technology is just not there based on the weight, the recharge times, and so on.
Yeah, it's improving.
Yeah.
It's improving all the time, but the thing is, still you have the weight, and that's the killer, especially in long haul vehicles like trucks. It's the weight of those batteries that are its downfall.
And that's it, and that's the important part here, is I believe that platinum, well, hydrogen parallel with platinum has a far more exciting future. We look at, as you say, the byproduct of it is water, so it actually returns back to its natural state and then is reproduced, and it can be reproduced. So it's never ever actually lost. But the great thing is, if we look at the whole hydrogen economy, we just need, like what Elon Musk did for the EV sector. When he started Tesla, everyone said he was mad. Like, how are you even looking at battery powered vehicles? It's not going to work. They're expensive. All the things we're raising. And yet he was able to get it together, and he's still, I mean, they're still building it. But then suddenly, within the space of 5 years, where there were only a couple of electric vehicles available, and this is throughout the world, even where we stay, suddenly people were buying electric vehicles. Suddenly it becomes more economical as far as costs and things like that to own a vehicle like that. And over a short space of time, it made battery powered vehicles very sexy, very in fashion, very prominent, and suddenly the demand for them went through the roof.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the biggest drivers in recent years is China. I mean, if you look at what's coming out of China now in terms of electric vehicles and the price that they're selling them at, it's making Tesla obsolete. I mean, why would I go and pay? I mean, I think I read somewhere the other day that if I want to import a Model 3 Tesla into South Africa at the moment, it's going to cost you roughly 1.6 million rand. And on the other hand, I can go and I can buy, what is it, the GWM Aura, I think, is roughly about 500,000. Now what am I going to buy? Same level of luxury, same level of comfort, same performance. Obviously, I'm going to pay a third or less than a third of what I would spend on a Tesla on the other on the GWM. And that's the thing. You've got BYD, you've got GWM, you've got Wowie that's bringing out electric vehicles, and at reasonable prices, excellent products. So that's the one thing. And I think what the biggest problem we still have, especially in South Africa, is infrastructure for those vehicles. I mean, we're looking at recharging them, yes, you can do it at home, but there aren't many stations where you can quickly nip into and just plug in your electric vehicle. Yes, they are increasing all the time, but it's still not there yet where I would say I'm 100% comfortable driving an electric vehicle, because if I run out of charge, I can just pull into the nearest petrol station and get a bit of a top up. And it's even worse with hydrogen at the moment. I mean, there's I think I can count probably on one hand the number of hydrogen refueling stations in South Africa for hydrogen vehicles.
And again, I think what's important is this is very at the front of technology right now. And you raised a very interesting story on price points. Now, when flat screens came out, they were horrendously expensive. When CDs came out, they were horrendously expensive until the economies of scales were able to bring them down, and where they go through a mass production cycle, and then it becomes cheaper to produce, and then you get a far more affordable range. And the same thing's going to happen with electric vehicles. And that's kind of where what you're highlighting now is that's where we are with it.
Yes, definitely. And it seems that as soon as China gets in on the game, we see that price drop. You know, it's like USA developed this amazing thing, and they've got this amazing idea, and but it's ours, and we're not going to share it with you. And if you want it, you're going to have to pay for it. You know, while as soon as China get their hooks into it, suddenly the prices come down, and it's why a lot more affordable and available to average people.
You know, I'm smiling because I'm thinking of a conversation we had earlier where we spoke about ChatGPT and DeepSeek, and how DeepSeek is open source, it's Chinese developed, and yet ChatGPT was developed at like vast amounts of money to get it, and it's still a paid subscription and so on. And here the Chinese come, it's open source, you can access it. And again, we're talking about cutting edge technology and how our world is literally being defined, or the future is being defined right now.
Yeah, and I think as we're talking about hydrogen, we're going to need one of those companies to make it wide, a commonplace, widely available thing. Because at the moment, Japan is the driver of it, and Japan is driving this hydrogen economy, but it's going to take more than Japan to drive it. It's going to take a China to take that and make it available to everybody.
But that said, and we can even see like within South Africa, I know through the mining sector, of course, we got a very dominant platinum sector in this country, and I've seen the big promotion of hydrogen fuel cells and so on. But even in this country, we're starting to set up facilities that we can start harvesting hydrogen.
Yeah, we've got the Buchubai project, which is probably the largest one, which is aimed at producing green hydrogen. And I mean, actually, the chamber is it the Chamber of Mines, or one of the big mining what do you call it, the mining departments actually have a hydrogen fuel cell running their facility. It's running their building, and you know what's at the heart of that? It's platinum.
Yeah, so that's actually Anglo Platinum. And then also Impala and all of those are very much involved in promoting that hydrogen
Yeah, so I
technology.
mean, yeah, even here we can already see that potential of hydrogen, the potential for it in the future, even if it's just as a producer. I mean, even if it's just as a producer, it shows that we've realized there's going to be a demand for that. We need to start and we need to prepare for that already. So, along with that is going to be the demand for platinum that's going to need to be used in all of those fuel cells. And that's why I'm saying if we're looking at platinum, we're not looking at today, we're looking at 20 years into the future.
And what's interesting, I mean, I did a look at forecasts from a number of different sources, and we're looking at very conservatively towards the end of this decade, which we 5 years out to getting to. They're talking about probably on the conservative side about $1,500 an ounce. Some more bullish are saying around $3,000 an ounce. Again, it like with gold, we just need certain conditions to be perfect for it to really ignite. We need that uptake in hydrogen demand. We need a China to start driving that technology and really starting to make it more meaningful. Then we'll actually see those even double on those kind of projections.
Yeah, definitely. It's not the safe haven asset that gold is. It's driven by demand, and it's going to be driven by industrial demand, especially in the hydrogen sector. So the bigger and the quicker the uptake on that, the higher we're going to see that price climb.
So, Willem, in concluding, I mean, just any final thoughts? I mean, in any interesting statistics on platinum that you maybe want to highlight or suggest, as just so people can understand. I mean, yeah.
So yeah, if we look at platinum, the greatest demand in platinum is still in the autocatalytic converter market or in the automotive sector, and that sits at roughly about 35% of demand comes from that. Jewelry is second with about 25% of demand. It's a lot lower than it was a few years ago, when we were talking about 2008 when it was extremely popular, but there's still a large demand in that market. And then we get the smaller things. Strangely enough, third biggest demand is from the chemical sector because platinum is used in chemical processes. It's used as a catalyst in various processes, and that's why, as I said before, it's more of an industrial metal. It's like silver. It's more buddies with silver than it is with gold, if I can put it that way. Now, the other thing or that we looking at is if we're looking at the in situ ratio. Now, what that is it's the ratio in which it appears naturally in the environment. We mine it, you get not just platinum. If you're mining for gold, you're mining for gold. If you're mining for platinum, you're mining for PGMs. So you're getting your platinum, you're getting your rhodium, you're getting your palladium, all of those coming out. And if we look at the ratio, then we're looking at about 41.8% of what comes out is platinum. Then 52% of what comes out is palladium. And finally, about 5.5% of what comes out is rhodium, and the rest is split between the rest of the PGM metals. And if we look at that and we look at the demand for autocats, at the moment, the demand on palladium totally outstrips the supply of what is available, not just of what a country is willing to mine and sell, but of what is actually sitting in the ground, of what comes out, of what you can possibly mine out of it. The demand for it is completely out of scale. And that's once again why we are probably looking at a swing back to platinum eventually.
And yes, again, I mentioned the dark horse, and I remember when I was first exposed to platinum, and my background is from the mining sector, and I worked very much in the gold sector and the platinum sector. So I was in the mining sector around 2008 when it was absolutely flying. But when I came into the business we're in now, we were looking at investments and so on. I mean, gold was always the first in mind. Silver, I was educated to understand and see the massive benefits and values to silver. And then a year later, once the company had been established, we had a specialist come and chat to us about it. My first reaction is it's dead. 2008 was its peak and it had no value. And literally, I think the meeting took 3 hours. My whole perspective of platinum was literally changed. Where we're talking about hydrogen economy, we're talking about the switch from autocat, from palladium to platinum, and that market's not going to disappear. And it's being more refined, and the vehicles will be more refined. And clearly, platinum fits that requirement more than palladium would.
It's definitely a product for the future.
Okay, so just on finishing, I mean, I think for our next episode, we were hinting at it already, but I think we got to talk about gold, brother. We always talk about the cycles of investing, and I've always said gold is like a marathon runner. It's very slow in its growth, and it builds up slowly, but once it gets going, it stays in, it's continuing, it's consistent. We see its growth over 50 years. It's given us that it's a marathon runner, unit for the long haul, and the price growth is generally marginal versus meteoric. Unfortunately, gold over the last 2 years has gone against that and has shot up, but we've been waiting for these pullbacks to equal it, and they're just not coming.
Yeah.
And again, that's the whole story to itself. But what I'm leading to is, of course, silver.
Yes.
Silver, I always used to compare in the same scenario from a marathon runner. Silver is probably the ADHD child, where it's up at $30 an ounce and pulls that back to $18 an ounce and is all over the place. Yet, over the last 2 years, we've seen a different trend with silver, and we're going to discuss that in the next episode. Why silver? Why now?
Indeed. So yeah, I think that's it for today then. Yeah, if you enjoyed the episode, if you found it useful, please hit that like button, consider subscribing, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.